Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to discuss the prose writer Richard Steele and his essay The Spectator Club. Richard Steele, we know, belonged to the Augustan age or the age of Pope, and Steele is well known for his prose writing, particularly the essays, which are known as the periodical essays. And Richard Steele is also well known for his periodicals, which he himself initiated, and few of them in collaboration with Joseph Addison. But if we look at Steele's career, he was not only a prose writer or essay writer or the innovator of several periodical, but also he was a dramatist, he was a playwright. He wrote some prose comedies, the best of which are The Funeral, The Lying Lover, The Tender Husband, The Conscious Lovers, etc. But it was his periodicals which made him immortal. So, what are his periodicals? He started The Tenant in 1709, The Spectator in 1711, and after that he also began some different periodicals which were very short lived, like The Guardian, The Englishman, The Reader, and The Plebeian. They were very short lived. But in the first two periodicals, he had Joseph Addison as his collaborator, and these two periodicals were quite successful. But The Spectator remains the most successful achievement of Steele. So, during this period, the periodicals which were being revived in the post-restoration period were changing their nature. Because initially in the post-restoration period, the periodicals were highly political in their writings. And the period already, that was the period of mannerism. It was a society of artificiality, artificial mannerism. There are the other aspects also, like other characteristics of this period already we had discussed during Joseph Addison. Like this period was having the culture of clubs, chocolate houses, card houses, parks, where young people were moving around, and there was the culture of bew and bew letters. Hundreds of bew letters were delivered. There were artificial wheat, etc. So, in this period, Augustan period, Joseph Addison and Richard Steele wanted to change these aspects by introducing certain writings which are social oriented. So, Richard Steele's prose writing is, like Joseph Addison, social oriented. It was not political. Political aspects are discussed, but they are not political in their intention. That is a difference. And another thing is that, like Addison, he also wanted that essays should be the vehicle of social changes. It should reflect the social problems or the social defects, blemishes. So, through his writing, he also wanted to criticize, or he wanted to be critical about the blunders or the blemishes of this period. And in his prose writing, he was not like Addison. Addison was more organized, he was not organized. Rather, he was very impulsive, and he wrote with a great zeal, and he used lot of humor, lot of wit, but somewhere he was lacking the use of irony. And his prose writing was also having another remarkable characteristics which makes him apart from the other prose essay writers, that is his ability to characterize or character sketches. And the Spectator is one such endeavor where he is successful as a character writer. By introducing the Spectator Club, because he wanted the people to be attracted towards a paper which should be familiar with the age, and because the club houses were familiar places, so he gave this paper the name Spectator Club. But at the same time, he also introduced a very innovative idea, that is, as if there are some characters in this club who are fictitious, but the reader will think that as if they are the real characters. So he had introduced some excellent characteristics through his different characters, and he had taken the characters from the cross section of the society, from all levels of the society, to make the paper very attractive to the readers who are from different parts of the society, irrespective of their religious or political differences. So there lies the success of Steele. So now let us look at the essay, The Spectator Club, and here he is introducing several characters. We will be discussing all these characters, and we will see that how as a character writer he is such a success. So his first character in this club is a gentleman of Worcestershire, and who is coming from the ancient descent, and he is also a baronet. That means this character is a character of aristocracy, of a landed descent, and his name is Sir Roger de Coverley. And how the characterization is working in his characters, he is giving some anecdotes, he is giving some history about the character, he is also giving some personal traits of the character. All these things were not very popular at his time, but still by combining all these, the anecdotes, personal traits, and the past events or the history of the character, he is able to create a living character out of his writing. The readers find these characters as very friendly, very much alive, in spite of their fictitious nature. So he is telling his great grandfather was inventor of that famous country dance which is called after him. So immediately he is providing some historical, means it is not the history but the history of the character, that his great grandfather invented a dance, country dance, and it is named after his name. So we can know what was the dance, but we know there was some dance, some local dance. His great grandfather was an inventor. That means this family is also having interest in culture. They are not only aristocrats, they are not only refined in their manners and all that, but they are also really cultured people. And He is a gentleman that is very singular in his behavior, but his singularities proceed from his good sense and are contradictions to the manners of the world. And Steele is claiming that Sir Roger de Coverley is a man of good sense, and he is in contradiction to the manners of the world, manners of the contemporary world, manners of the post-restoration world, which was full of scandals, full of gossiping, full of all these things, artificial behavior and all that. So, he is a man of good sense, and his humor creates him no enemies, for he does nothing with sourness of obstinacy, and his being unconfined to modes and forms makes him but the readier and more capable to please and oblige all who know him. So, what are the other characteristics of this gentleman? He uses humor, but these are very pleasant humor, therefore he creates no enemies. Then he is not a man of sourness or obstinacy. He is not a man of obstinacy. He is a man who wants to be flexible, who is a flexible man. He takes into consideration the people and places and things by their merit, not by the information he receives or not by the reputation created. And when he lives in Soho Square, it is said he keeps himself a bachelor by reason he was crossed in love by a perverse beautiful widow of the next country to him, and now he lives in London in Soho Square, which was a prominent place in those times, a fashionable place, and he lives a bachelor. He has not married. Later on, Steele is going to tell about his age. His present age is 56, but he is a bachelor. Why? Because when he was young, he was repulsed by a perverse widow of the next country, and he didn't marry. That means it shows that Sir Roger de Coverley is a man of sentiment. He values his own sentiment. The lady who repulsed him may not be a good lady, but he doesn't bother about that. He gives importance to, he gives significance to his emotions. So look at the way that Steele is creating the character. It is a very noble character that he is creating in Sir Roger de Coverley. And he had supped with my Lord Rochester and Sir George Etheredge, and in Soho Square, where he lives, he also lives a very social life, and he visits the writer George Etheredge and Rochester, the politician, and he is a man who is affable, who mixes with everyone. He is known among all others. It is not that he is confined to his place. And he had also fought a duel upon his first coming to the town and kicked Bully Dawson for calling him a youngster. When he came to London, the London bully Dawson called him a youngster. He got infuriated, he fought a duel with him, and he also kicked Dawson. It proves that he is a man of courage. He is a man of real courage, a man of reputation, who should not be called by the bully anything. So he punished the bully for the duel. He didn't consider what will happen to him. So in this way, what is happening? That gradually Steele is creating a noble, a sound character around the name of Sir Roger de Coverley. And another aspect he is telling that is a peculiarity in this character, that he puts on only one type of one coat fashion of dress, that is a double coat and doublet, which was a fashion during his young age when he was in love with that lady and the lady repulsed him. After that, the fashion has changed in London, but he has not changed his fashion. He is doing that. So again, there is a strong sentiment being expressed, noble sentiment being expressed by Roger de Coverley's character. And we find that he has frequently offended in point of chastity with beggars and gypsies, but this is looked upon by his friends rather as matter of raillery than truth. That sometimes even very ordinary people, they also just told about him or teased him that he is an old fashioned fellow in relation to his love and his repulsement, but he never takes offense. He doesn't mind it. And he is cheerful, gay, hearty, keeps a good house in both town and country. He lives a very happy life, very cheerful personality, and he maintains good household in both Soho as well as in Worcestershire. So this proves that he is a good master and he wants to live a good life. And under him, his tenants grow rich, his servants look satisfied, all the young women profess love. He is a highly sociable and lovable character. He is not a master who exploits his tenants become rich. And his servants love him. And young women profess love to him. So he is not only loved by the servants or the tenants, but also he is loved by young people. Even young men always want to be in company with him. And when he comes to house, he calls the servants by their names and talks all the way upstairs to a visit. I must not omit that Sir Roger is a justice of the quorum, and he is a person of real manners. When he comes to house, he talks with the servant. He is not dismissive. And whenever there are guests, he accompanies them to the stair. And he is a man of justice. Whenever he presides over a meeting, he always looks at the quorum, the attendance, proper attendance of the members. And 3 months ago gained universal applause by explaining a passage in the Game Act. And also he is a man of knowledge. He knows all those knowledges which a man of his position, a man of his reputation should know. So in this way, we find that Richard Steele is creating a character with all vividness, with all his complexity, show photographically before the reader that we can immediately imagine the character before in our mind, and we get familiar with the character. So that is the credit of Richard Steele. The second character he is introducing here is a member of the Inner Temple. That means he is a lawyer in the highest court of London in those days. And again he is telling that he is a young man who didn't want to follow the profession of law, but it was his desire, it was the desire of his father who wanted him to be a lawyer in the court of London, because that was the great fashion at that time and that was the great achievement in those days. So the father had the ambition that his son should be the member of Inner Temple, and his son didn't disappoint his father. In spite of his interest lying somewhere else, he became a loyal son, he became a successful lawyer. Then where lies his interest? So the writer is informing through humor that in place of He was placed there to study the laws of the land and is the most learned of any of the house in those of the stage. Aristotle and Longinus are much better understood by him than Littleton and Coke. So, when he was placed in the law school or law college, he was one of the most learned student. And when he became a lawyer, he is also a very successful lawyer, a very learned lawyer. But his interest lies somewhere in literature. He knows Aristotle and Longinus better than Littleton and Coke, who were the writers of law of that period. So, this shows the contradiction with the character, which is very beautifully related by the writer to the reader. And he has also informed us that the father of this lawyer, to boast in his locality, to boast in his place, always sends questions to him related to the legal procedure and act, like questions relating to marriage articles, leases and tenures in the neighborhood. So, whenever there was any problem in the neighborhood regarding marriage or tenure or lease, the father writes the letter to the son, and the son also very dutifully answers or elaborates all those legal aspects to the father. So, in this way we find that he is a very loyal son, very obedient son. In spite of his love for knowledge lies with literature, he is a good lawyer and he is dispensing his duties, his profession very sincerely. He knows the argument of each of the orations of Demosthenes and Tully, but not one case in reports of our own courts. So, he vividly remembers all the speeches of different plays, Greek plays, speeches of Demosthenes or Tully. But he doesn't remember. He is an efficient lawyer, but he doesn't remember those things. That means the writer is suggesting that his interest is not there. So, he doesn't remember any legal reports of the court of law. And his taste of books is a little too just for the age he lives in. He has read all but approves of very few. And another great character that the writer points out in this lawyer is that he is a voracious reader, and this age being the age of knowledge explosion, gradually writings were coming up with new knowledges. So, he was a voracious reader, he was reading all the books, but he was a real scholar, he was a real man of intelligence and wit. He approves very few. He reads and rejects. He rejects the ordinary trusses, because in those days people were also writing, trying to be a writer just for the fame. They were writing the truss. He was rejecting the truss and approving only few genuine good books. And his familiarity with the custom, manner, action and writing of the ancients makes him a very delicate observer of what occurs to him in the present world. And he is also a good judge of the present society. Why? Because he is a good reader as well as a good receiver about all the historical societies, their customs, their manners, their actions and writings. Therefore, he is the best person to judge his own period, his own people. He is an excellent critic, and the time of the play is his hour of business. Exactly at 5 he passes through New Inn. And another important characteristic that Steele is presenting about this young lawyer is that he is a great lover of theatre. Exactly at 5, when the court of law comes to an end, he moves directly from the court of law to the theatre house. But before entering the theatre house, he takes care of his appearance. His shoes are polished, his wigs are powdered, and he appears as a proper dramatic lover of drama. And even the theatre houses, they know that he is the best critic about drama because he is knowledgeable about drama. Therefore, they also wait for him before beginning the play. Because if he will be there, he can interpret the drama to the audience, and the audience will be loving the drama, and dramas will be popular. Even the actors, they also eagerly wait for his presence, so that he can appreciate their acting, he can appreciate their dialogue, he can appreciate their work. So in this way, what we find, that his interest lies in drama, in literature, in society, in culture, more than the law. But still, he is always loyal to his father. So in this way, the writer is creating another good character, or a complex character, which is also a character who is very friendly and who is easily found in any society. And the third person in the Spectator Club is a person of next consideration is Sir Andrew Freeport. Look at the name. The second character's name is not given intentionally. The third person's name is given, Andrew Freeport. Freeport, from that title you can know easily that he is a merchant who is having the ships in the ports, seaports. A merchant of great eminence in the city of London, a person of indefatigable industry, strong reason and great experience. So his character is being developed. How? He is a person of indefatigable industry, tireless work. He never gets tired by his work. He is a great worker to succeed in his business. And second, he is having sound reason, because without reason, without rationalizing, you can't be a good businessman. So he is having sound reason and great experience. He is also having a lot of experience in doing business. His notions of trade are noble and generous. He calls the sea the British common, and he represents the noble idea of British entrepreneurship or British trade and commerce in 18th century, when Britain was trying to dominate over other European powers who were more powerful than Britain. So the emerging naval power of Britain and the emerging sea trade and commerce in Britain is being represented by Andrew Freeport. So what he is telling? He is telling the sea as British common. The sea is the common property of all the nations. No one can dominate it. And the British common, it is British common means it is the property of the Britain and its Commonwealth, because you know all those colonies were called the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth concept came during the time of Cromwell. So he is telling that the sea is the British common, and he is acquainted with commerce in all its parts. Way to extend dominion by army, for true power is to be got by the arts and industry. And he believes in the power of trade and commerce in such a manner, he subscribes to this idea in such a manner, he says that army, war, violence are not necessary to dominate over different countries or people. He says that violence and war, they are not going to succeed in all places in all time, but it is trade and commerce by which we can have the domination, or we can have the control over different people and different land. So he is telling that diligence makes more lasting acquisitions than valor, and sloth has ruined more nations than sword. So he is advocating diligence, which is one of the best qualities of a businessman or a trader or a merchant. So he is telling diligence is more noble than valor. In valor, what you will go? You will do, you will go and fight. In the fight, you may be killed and there will be hatred for you. But when you are diligent, you are persuading people through trade and commerce, it is permanent. And he is telling sloth or laziness has ruined many countries. Many countries are being ruined by sloth or laziness. So laziness and busyness, they are antagonistic to each other. So he is telling sloth has ruined many nations than the sword. It is not the enemy and his power which can destroy a country, but it is the laziness on the part of the citizens of that country. Therefore, he is urging the British people to be more active, to be more involved in this entrepreneurship, in this trade and commerce, to make Britain more powerful, more rich. And he is also favoring frugality. By earning, you can spend as much as you like. That also he doesn't approve. He is telling that frugality is a necessity, because a penny, his maxim is, a penny saved is a penny got or penny earned. If you save a penny, you save a rupee, you can earn a rupee. It is as good as earning a rupee. And he is telling that a general scholar and Sir Andrew having a natural unaffected eloquence, the perspicuity of his discourse gives the same pleasure that wit would in another man. He may not be an intellectual, he may not be a great scholar, but his insight, his perspicuity and his experiences have made his eloquence, his conversations very enriching. He is well appreciated by his listeners because he has the real insight into everything and he has the real idea through his experiences. And he is telling England may be richer than other kingdoms by as plain methods as he himself is richer than other men, though what the writer says that Andrew Freeport strongly subscribes to the idea that a nation can be rich only through trade and commerce. And he gives his own example that as he has become rich, so England has also become rich through that diligence, through that indefatigable spirit of labor, strong reason and experience. And finally, still is telling about Sir Andrew Freeport and his significance, that there is not a single port anywhere where his ship is not there. That means Sir Andrew Freeport has emerged as a most successful entrepreneur, a man of trade and commerce, who is the representative of the spirit of England. So in this way we find that Steele is making his characters very vivid through the different anecdotes, through their personal histories, through their different characteristics which are very common, but there are certain uncommonality within the commonness. So it has emerged as one of the significant aspect of character writing in 18th century, and the credit is definitely with Richard Steele. We will discuss more about these characterizations and the characters in the Spectator Club. And for today, I will remain here. Thank you.